She was found face down in the dunes, murdered, unrecognizable, and forgotten for nearly 50 years. This is the horrifying true story of the Lady of the Dunes and the monster who tried to erase her forever. Once again, welcome to another interesting and exciting video. Provincetown, Massachusetts is a quaint coastal town known for its vibrant art scene and postcard-perfect landscapes. And Cape Cod, with its beautiful shoreline and sprawling dunes, provides a nice contrast to the bustling galleries and cafes of the town's narrow streets. No one could have foreseen that it would be the setting of one of America's most enduring true crime mysteries, but that's exactly what it became in the summer of 1974. It all started on July 26th, when a 12-year-old girl was drawn to the insistent barking of her dog while exploring the sands of the Race Point Dunes in Provincetown. Her dog led her away from the beaten path and towards a gruesome sight. Lying on the dunes was the decomposing body of a woman lying face down on a beach blanket. Her auburn hair was tied back with a gold elastic. Her toes still bore the pink nail polish they'd been painted with, and a blue bandana and a pair of Wrangler jeans were placed beneath her head like a pillow. The almost peaceful way she was lying was at complete odds with the obvious brutality that ended her life. The woman's head was almost removed, and on one side it looked as though it was crushed in. There were also signs that an assault took place after her death, and her hands in one form was missing, along with several teeth, leading police to theorize that her killer sought to conceal her identity. Despite the significant insect activity and decomposition, however, forensic analysis provided a portrait of who she might be. She was believed to be between 25 and 40 years old, although some sources suggested that she may have been as young as 20 or as old as 49. Also standing approximately 5'6" and weighing around 145 pounds, she had an athletic build and had undergone extensive dental work during her life worth thousands of dollars. These details hinted at a woman who might have once led a comfortable life, but her presence in the dunes and the brutal manner of her death posed far more questions than answers. Obviously, the most pressing among them being, who was she? And for just shy of the next 50 years, she would only be known by the name the Lady of the Dunes. With little evidence beyond the beach blanket, bandana, jeans, and some tire tracks that were found about 50 yards away from the scene, the case quickly grew cold. There were also no signs of a struggle, leading police to theorize that she may have been killed by someone she knew or while she was asleep. Desperate for leads, investigators meticulously sifted through the sands of the surrounding dunes, searching for any clue that might break the case. They also combed through thousands of missing persons cases and examined vehicle records for cars reported near the area, but no matches emerged. And despite their exhaustive efforts, including consultations with forensic experts and profilers, the trail led nowhere. So finally, in October of 1974, the Lady of the Dunes was buried, leaving behind a void filled with speculation and unanswered questions. What followed was nearly 5 decades of frustration and dead ends. Investigators made painstaking efforts to piece together her story, employing everything from clay-based facial reconstructions in the 1970s to advanced DNA analysis of the 21st century. Then, exhumations in 1980 and again in 2000 yielded no significant breakthroughs. It wasn't until October 31st, 2022, 48 years after the body was found, that modern forensic technology finally identified the woman as Ruth Marie Terry. And with her identity came the unveiling of a troubled past that included a turbulent marriage and a husband with a history of violence and unresolved disappearances. Ruth was born on September 8, 1936, in a modest mountainside shack in Whitwell, Tennessee. Life in the rural South was hard, and Ruth's upbringing reflected the struggles of the time and place. By the time she was a young woman, Ruth married briefly, but that union quickly dissolved, and she sought a fresh start in Michigan. In 1957, she left her small-town roots behind and took a job at the Fisher Body Automotive plant in Livonia, where she gave birth to a son, Richard, in 1958. Financial struggles, however, led her to make a heartbreaking decision. She was unable to provide for her child, so Ruth allowed her supervisor at the automotive plant to adopt Richard in exchange for help with her mounting expenses. Shortly after the adoption, she moved to California in search of another clean slate. Her life there remained largely a mystery until 1974, when she met an antiques dealer named Guy Rockwell Muldavin. That same year, the pair married, with Ruth blissfully unaware of her new husband's checkered and questionable past. About 6 months before her death, the couple went to Tennessee to visit Ruth's family, and immediately, their relationship seemed anything but perfect, with Ruth's family members recalling that Guy was possessive and controlling. Those who saw her noted a change in her demeanor and behavior, particularly when Guy was present. She seemed subdued, almost unrecognizable from the vibrant woman they had once known. While there, Ruth and Guy spoke of traveling across the United States to hunt for antiques and mentioned Massachusetts as one of their destinations. And after their brief visit to Tennessee, off they went across the highways of the country. By the end of the summer, however, Guy showed back up in Whitwell, alone. The only reason for his visit was to inform her family that Ruth was missing. But his explanations were vague and varied. At one point, he claimed that she disappeared from their home in California. On another occasion, he said they got into an argument during their honeymoon and that she stormed off, not to be seen again. When Ruth's brother hired a private investigator, however, the trail led to some disturbing revelations. According to the detective, Ruth's belongings had apparently been sold off, and she had joined a religious cult. It's not clear if the investigator had deliberately misled the family or was simply mistaken, but either way, this was not what had actually happened to her. Unfortunately, afterward, the years passed, and Ruth's name faded into obscurity, with her actual fate a mystery to her family. Her disappearance was even noted in family obituaries, as if she was deceased, although no one knew what truly happened. It wasn't until her identification as the Lady of the Dunes in 2022 that the blame for her disappearance in 1974 started to point in a specific direction. Once she had been identified, determining who was responsible for her death became obvious as Guy's history was examined more closely. Born in 1923, Guy liked to present himself as a simple yet charming antiques dealer, but in truth, his life was filled with a string of dark incidents. On April 1st, 1960, Guy's second wife, Manzanita Ryan, and her daughter from another marriage, suddenly and mysteriously disappeared from their Seattle home. Immediately, suspicion fell on Guy, which led to a search warrant that was served on the house the couple shared. Investigators then checked every aspect of the property, including the septic tank. Inside the tank, they made a grisly discovery in the form of several dismembered body parts. When Guy was presented with the information, he basically shrugged his shoulders and played dumb as to how they got there. And as much as the writing seemed to be on the wall for Guy after his discovery, investigators were unable to conclusively identify the remains as belonging to Manzanita or her daughter, and he was never charged. A short time later, Guy quickly married again, only to face legal troubles when he swindled his new wife's family out of $10,000. He was then convicted of larceny in 1961 and sentenced to 15 years in prison, but after spending only 15 months in a cell, a judge suspended the sentence if Guy agreed to pay the family back what he stole from them, and if this wasn't enough, Guy was linked to other unsolved cases. Among these was the 1950 murder of Henry Baird, who was a 28-year-old bread truck driver, and the simultaneous disappearance of his girlfriend, 17-year-old Barbara Jo Kelly. The couple apparently went on a date, but never returned to their respective homes. Then the next morning, Henry's body was discovered on a desolate California beach, face down and nude, with the exception of shoes and socks. Nearby, investigators found his and Barbara's personal belongings neatly folded and piled up. But there was no sign of Barbara herself. Authorities suspected that Henry was killed and that Barbara had been taken and likely met an equally grim fate. And Guy, who had been living in Fortuna, California around the time of the murders, became a suspect investigators looked into. But it was ultimately determined that he had left the area several weeks before the murders took place. But in any case, in August of 2023, the culmination of decades of investigation finally brought to close the story of the Lady in the Dunes. Modern forensic advancements and a thorough revelation of the evidence left little doubt, and Guy was officially named Ruth's murderer. This determination brought bittersweet relief to Ruth's family, who had spent nearly 50 years haunted by the questions surrounding her fate. And for the community of Provincetown and the countless investigators who pursued justice for the Lady of the Dunes, the resolution marked the end of an era as the state of Massachusetts' longest unidentified homicide victim case. See you in the next video, but for now, bye. Wait, where are you going? At least hit that subscribe button. After all this effort, don't I deserve that much?